What's up everyone, Lennon Lee por aquí. Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Se Habla Real Estate. Y pues hoy me complace comentarles que traemos una entrevista en inglés. Como ya habíamos hablado antes en varios episodios, pues teníamos la idea de hacerlo. Definitivamente tenemos amigos, compañeros, socios de muy alto nivel que pues lamentablemente no hablan español, pero que pueden traer demasiado buen contenido para todos nosotros, y pues decidimos empezar a hacer entrevistas en inglés, aparte pues de las típicas entrevistas y episodios en español. Así que bueno, más contenido, más educación, y aquí me acompaña mi brother, mi pana, my co-host, Arturo Borges. Arturo, what's up? ¿Cómo está todo, hermano?
Todo bien, Lee, excelente. Muy emocionado de traerles este episodio, es totalmente en inglés. Y bueno, como tú dices, tenemos a gente, quizás hasta mucho más gente en inglés que en español, que sabemos que pueden traer muchísimo valor a nuestra audiencia. Y a la final estamos en los Estados Unidos, operamos en los Estados Unidos, y toda esa gente que quiere invertir su dinero, hacer negocios aquí, pues de alguna manera tiene que familiarizarse con el lingo y las expresiones y los términos de aquí de los Estados Unidos. Así que
100%.
no quiere decir que vamos a recortar nuestro contenido en español, para nada, sino que vamos a poner más contenido allá afuera también en inglés. Bueno, en este episodio nos acompaña Shawn DiMartile. Vamos a tener una conversación con Shawn, muy emocionado. Shawn es nativo de Louisville, Kentucky, sirvió 5 años para la Marina, aquí en el ejército de los Estados Unidos, antes de continuar su carrera como controlador de tránsito aéreo para la FAA, donde ha estado ya durante unos 4 años. El portafolio de Shawn de bienes raíces consiste en una propiedad residencial en San Diego y una propiedad multifamiliar de 32 unidades en Indianápolis. Es cofundador de The Multifamily Takeoff Partners, coanfitrión del podcast The Multifamily Takeoff Podcast, co-host de The Beers and Deals Real Estate Investing Networking Event. Shawn, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very good. How you guys doing today?
We're doing great, man.
Doing well, man. Happy to have you, and excited about this one.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited about this podcast. Been looking forward to it. Love chatting real estate, so
Yeah.
I'm ready to get on.
All right, let's do it. Why don't you expand a little bit more on your bio and I guess your background, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, of course. So I'll try to give like a medium range of my background here without going too long. But essentially, I did a couple of years in the Navy. I did 5 years as an air traffic controller in the Navy here in San Diego, California. Was considered Navy North Island, or at the island of Coronado, if anyone's familiar with San Diego, California. I did 5 years from 2010 to 2015. In 2015, I got out of the Navy and I got hired by the Federal Aviation Administration as an air traffic controller. So I still do that for my day job. It's a great job. I control the approaches and departures out of all of Orange County in California.
Wow.
And I control it all from down here in San Diego. So if anyone's ever flown into SoCal, I control the approaches and departures out of John Wayne Airport, Long Beach, Fullerton, Torrance, and Los Alamitos. What got me into real estate just about 3 years ago, I had extra money to invest. I was making good money at my job. And I just knew that I needed to put my money somewhere. Just simply investing in my 401k, I was maxing out my contributions to my 401k. So I had extra money outside of that. And one day I got coffee with a buddy of mine who is a real estate agent. He said, you know what, man, you should listen to this podcast called Bigger Pockets. It's a really cool podcast where they have all these guys on that talk about real estate, and maybe you should consider getting into real estate. And it's funny because I didn't listen to that podcast right away. It was probably like a year or two later that I was driving on an 8-hour drive up to Yosemite to go backpacking. I was bored listening to music and I popped on. I was like, oh yeah, my buddy told me about this podcast. I popped that on. And the moment that I popped that on, my entire life changed. I got glued to it. I was like, man, what these guys are saying, this is making sense. I'm hearing all of these stories of people getting successful in real estate. And that basically just started this snowball effect where I just became this learning machine, where I would just listening to every real estate podcast I could find. If they mentioned a book, I read all of the books. I've read everything from Rich Dad, Poor Dad to every syndication book you could think of. And I just kept doing this over and over again. Fast forward a couple years later, I'm ready to start making some moves. I'm looking in some markets in the Midwest. I'm not the single family thing doesn't make sense to me. I'm looking at small multifamilies. And then I have 2 buddies that I work with who are now my partners, one of them, they're both looking for properties at the same time. And then one of them just spoke up and said, what are we doing? Like, why don't we just put our money and our heads together and form a partnership and jump right into the larger multifamily? And we all kind of just looked at each other and said, yeah, why don't we do that? And that basically started our long journey of our partnership. And, one thing led to another. I'm sure we'll get into some more of it, but then we eventually got into a 32 unit deal together as our first deal that we closed on last December. And, since then we've started a podcast, started a meetup, and I guess that's the short version I could give you.
I love it, man.
Awesome. Shawn, let's go back a little bit, because I've always had, deep respect for the military, and I really would love to dig a bit deeper into your career in the Navy, and specifically really the mindset you developed being in the military. I've had the opportunity to meet some great, talented, committed personnel, and I've always been fascinated by their level of discipline, their go get it, I'll do whatever it takes mentality. So tell us a little bit more on how you've been able to bring those skills and that mindset, that execution mode mindset, into your real estate career. How do you actually transition from what you were doing in the military into the real estate? How you took that from?
Absolutely. Two things: competitiveness and discipline. And competitiveness, that's really helped I've really been able to take that trait and carry that with me. And the reason being is, when you're in the Navy, you increase rank largely based off of a test, when you're enlisted, at least based off of a test that you take whenever, like, they do this test once a year for you to increase your rank. It's based off of an algorithm with your score on that test and also your evaluations, or your evals. And your evals are weighted very, very heavily. So if you have a good evaluation based off of your performance, you're more likely to increase your rank. So in the Navy, it's really simple. You just have to, it's a competition. You've got to beat out everybody else to get the best eval, and then also study your butt off in order to rank up as quickly as possible. So I did 5 years in the Navy. I went from an E1 to an E6, 6 ranks up. And I was able to, every time I was up for advancement, I advanced. And the way that I was able to do that is I learned quickly, and it just made sense to me that you've just got to do better than everybody else around you. So as an air traffic controller, I had to study my butt off and obviously dominate the test. But I also had to show up to work on early every single day, stay late every single day, consistently ask for more duties, or hats as they call them. So I'm consistently saying, hey, I'd like to be the training petty officer so that I can, document everyone's training, stay late after work, inputting all the critiques that everyone's written, on and on and on. As many duties as I could get, I would take them on. And it taught me time management, the value of hard work, and how to be competitive. And when I got out of the Navy, I just tried to keep that same mindset, especially as I got into even into real estate, because even real estate is competitive. You're competing against other buyers constantly for a property. So you've got to try to set yourself apart. So I just kept, busting my butt studying. Whenever I would learn a topic, I would just keep creating flashcards or reading a new book, constantly trying to advance. So I would say those are the two biggest things that I was able to carry with me. And I think those are extremely valuable that I got out of the Navy.
Yeah, I love it. I think, that's always going to be a mindset. And you're right? Like in real estate, even though it's not a zero-sum game, like maybe Wall Street is, you're still going to be competing, right? Like for specific deals. Like if you go high enough, maybe there's, and you have an abundance mindset, you're probably not going to look at it that way. But I don't think one thing has to do with the other. You can still be ultra competitive, maybe even aggressive sometimes on the pursuit of specific deals or acquisitions, but still have that abundance mindset where you understand that the fact that you're being competitive doesn't really mean that you're trying to screw other people, right?
Absolutely, 100%. It's not about necessarily trying to put others down or screw other people. It's just it's more of a mindset and that competitive drive of constantly thinking, okay, I've reached this next echelon. What do I got to do next? Okay, this guy, he's doing this, and this. He's got a podcast. He's got a meetup. how am I going to be attracting more capital if this guy's doing more than me? I've got to step it up,
Right.
And I think that keeping that mindset and constantly trying to add more on your plate is how, at least if you want to get to that higher tier, if you're, trying to reach that higher level of wealth,
Right.
you've got to be doing more than what the other guys are doing. You can't just do the bare minimum. It also reminds me of like sports a lot because for people that like sports like I did growing up, you hear about the greats like Michael Jordan or, Ken Griffey Jr., whoever, whatever sport you like, they all tell you the same thing when it comes to competing something like that. While everyone else is out playing with their friends or playing Call of Duty Warzone or whatever the case has got to be, if you want to be the best, you've got to be at home putting in the work. You can't be doing that kind of stuff all the time, 5 hours a day. You've got to be at home studying. You've got to be, talking to more brokers, whatever the case is for real estate. You've got to be putting in the work constantly to beat out everybody else. So I think that is super important in the game of real estate if you want to achieve that real wealth.
About the meetups, the podcast, in general, your thought leadership platforms, and I'm curious about that because you guys have the podcast, you have your meetup. You have your firm that you co-founded with your partner. So how did that come about? How did that, come up and what's the reason behind that? And how can someone listening to this can replicate that? And what's really the benefit of that as for you as a real estate investor?
So that came from Joe Fairless's book called The Best Ever Real Estate Syndication Book. And in that book, and I'll also give some credit to Hunter Thompson too, because he's got another great book about raising capital for real estate. And a lot of these top syndicators will tell you, if you want to follow that model, if you're trying to attract millions of dollars, you've got to accomplish a couple things. One of them is that you've got to be recognized as a thought leadership, as you say, or as an expert in the field. And then another thing is that you've got to just get yourself out there. So after reading that book, me and my partners will read the same books. It's almost like somebody will be like, "Hey, I found a new book that I heard on a podcast. Let's all read it." All right, let's do it. And then we'll talk about it. But with Joe Fairless's book, he really outlines like, look, if you want to attract capital and you want to become an expert, these are some things you should do. He recommends a thought leadership platform, whether that's some type of a YouTube channel or a podcast or whatever. We love podcasts. Me, my partners and I. We're constantly listening to a lot of the top syndicators out there. And so we just thought, since we love podcasts so much, why not go that route? And we took the podcast thing on as a way of not only trying to establish ourselves as thought leaderships and get our name out there, but also as an educational tool for ourselves. We wanted to bring on the top syndicators and just ask them the questions we've been dying to ask them. And, we'll bring them on and say, tell us, like, how do you build your investor list and get so much capital invested with you? And ask them those tough questions. So that was really the catalyst for starting the podcast, which we started late last year. And the meetup kind of went hand in hand with that. It was the idea of like, we're already going to these other meetups. We wanted to start our own meetup because for your listeners out there, if you're thinking about doing it, do it. Because when you have your own meetup, when people are coming to the meetup for the first time, they want to meet whoever the meetup host is. They're going to come find you and say, "Oh, you're running the meetup. I found you on Bigger Pockets, or I found you on the Meetup app, or whatever the case may be." And you're just have a higher likelihood of meeting people. And it almost kind of forces you to, because you're the one running the show, so you should be talking to people. So I think it's just an absolutely phenomenal way to meet people. Matter of fact, I was able to attract $50,000 for the deal we closed on last December from that meetup, which we had only been doing the meetup for a couple of months. So without that meetup, it would have been harder for me to close my deal in December. So those two things, we decided like, let's not leave any box unchecked. Let's do everything there is to do to try and grow this business. And that's why we did those two things right there.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's on point. One part of the reason why Arturo and I are doing this podcast is just that as well. But and I've also been. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Joe, which I started my career when I started investing as a limited partner in multifamily investments. It was with Joe and his company, and then I started working with them for a little bit. for a couple of years actually, and we're good partners on a few deals. So, and yeah, I totally agree. I particularly started with a meetup and then started doing podcasts and videos. So I did it the other way around, and it works, man. It's just like you said. I figured, well, you know what? I'm gonna be sitting down with these experts in the industry. I'll be asking the questions. I'll be leading the conversation. So I can ask all the questions that I want to learn about. And I know a lot of people out there want to hear the same, want to hear the answers to those same questions that they have. So you might as well do it. And at the same time, people are going to start seeing you as someone that's, in the industry with connections and leading in a way, right? So that's definitely very important.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to that 8-hour ride to Yosemite, where you started listening to this podcast, Bigger Pockets, which again, it's basically the same story for me. I started listening to that same podcast, and it changed my life, just like Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh yeah.
But so, what specifically made sense to you? Because you said you were listening to all these people talk about their stories and stuff, and at that point you were not involved in real estate, I assume. So what made sense to you that made you, okay, you know what, real estate is the vehicle, or real estate is what I'm going to do to achieve whatever, right? Financial freedom or build wealth or whatever it is for you?
So what it was when I was listening to some of these episodes, because I had never been involved in real estate. I grew up low middle class, went to bad schools. I grew up pretty poor for the most part. So the people that owned like multiple houses, like if somebody would have told me they owned 5 houses, I'd be like, whoa, you must be rich.
Right.
So this concept of your everyday middle class person being able to go out and build a real estate portfolio, I would have never thought that's even something I should attempt. And I'm hearing people on Bigger Pockets telling their stories. That's one of my favorite things about podcasts is hearing somebody that's basically rags to riches, or somebody that's just your typical everyday citizen that was able to build something significant. And I remember hearing a story about like a teacher or somebody that was able to slowly start buying houses, rehabbing them, renting them out, refinancing and repeating, and able to build up a portfolio of dozens of houses. And he was talking about how, he doesn't have to work anymore. He was only doing it in he accomplished all of this in a matter of just, less than 10 years. And he's driving these fancy cars and stuff. And I'm hearing that and I'm like, oh my goodness, like this sounds way better than investing in my 401k till I'm 65. Like
Right.
I'm intrigued. I want to know more. And I kept listening, and it just seemed like everybody that came on the show was repeating the same story, that they were able to continuously roll these investments into new ones and create enormous amounts of wealth. And so I just kept digging in. I think I must have listened to, 6-7 episodes each way to and from Yosemite. And I'm probably a similar story to a lot of people, is that they just got hooked and listened to like every single episode that they had after that. And that's basically what I did. But what made sense to me the most was the fact that you could create wealth and live off of the cash flow. And that was the first time I had heard the word cash flow.
Right.
And the fact that you could that's just sitting there paying your bills every single month, and you don't have to go to work anymore and continue grinding. That's when it clicked.
Yeah. So just the basic concept of a vehicle or a platform or something, in this case, real estate, that allowed you to not continue to exchange your time for money, but to put your money to work for you. And so you can sit back and relax eventually if you wanted to. Right.
Exactly. And I'm a hard worker, so that made even more sense to me. I'm the kind of guy that works overtime every week. I'm usually working 6 days a week.
Right.
And I'm just like saving my money prior to this,
Right.
stacking it up and saving. And okay, what am I going to spend this on? And when I heard those and heard what you could do with it to make your money work for you and to receive cash flow every month, that was the huge light bulb that went above my head. And that's when I was addicted, and I just went psycho reading and learning. I was obsessed.
Right. Yeah. So I'm excited to go to get into the numbers and into that 32 unit deal that you bought. But
Yeah.
Before that, because I want to understand your thought process for the building of your partnership, of the multifamily takeoff partners. Three guys, friends, they were pursuing the same thing individually. You figure, well, you know what? Why don't we join forces and we'll do it together? Which I think I love it, because I think it's always more fun to do it with partners. So, but beyond that, right? Beyond the fun part, how do you guys think about it? And more specifically, I want to understand. Okay, how do you think about? Okay, well, you know what? You're good at this. I'm good at that. How do we compensate for each other and complement each other?
It was kind of a combination of everybody just splitting up the work at first and kind of seeing and learning each person's strengths as we went. So my two partners are Mike and Rich. And as we were working, it became abundantly clear. Everybody knows Rich Summers, and he's just this guy that is one of those ultra outgoing guys. If you're talking to him, he's very, very engaged. He's looking at you in the eyes the entire time. He's asking great questions just naturally. So he's really, really well at carrying a conversation and being super friendly. You just want to be the guy's friend as soon as you talk to him. Right. It became abundantly clear because we started out as, okay, you cover these three markets, you cover these three markets, and you cover these three markets, and everybody go, make their list of brokers and start networking with brokers. It became abundantly clear that Rich was the best at that. Rich is the one who was able to get this off-market 32-unit deal that we're going to talk about in Indianapolis. And Rich, that's just his natural strength, right? He loves doing it. He loves talking to people. And so building those relationships was clearly going to be his role. And he's also just one of those guys that's great at speaking the lingo, talking multifamily real estate, and it just flows off his tongue naturally. So that was clear for him. Early on, I just wanted to be the numbers guy. I really wanted to do the underwriting of the property and learn how to do the spreadsheets better. So, right. I spent so many hours trying to build my own spreadsheet. We eventually bought Michael Blanc's real estate or a syndicated deal analyzer, which I like a lot. And then Mike, who already owned some small multifamilies in Cleveland, has some experience working with property managers. Right. He really wanted to dive in and be the primary contact with the property manager and work on asset management. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, I have an experience in construction, and my dad owns a construction company. So I kind of took on the role of, okay, I'll be underwriting the properties. I'll help you with the asset management, and the fact that I'm going to be the guy communicating with these contractors because I can speak the lingo with them a little bit better. Right. I know how to set up these contracts and stuff like that. So that's how we set up how to get going with all of this. And everybody was happy with those roles. And then we also kind of help each other out because we have three people in the partnership. So if one person's kind of overloaded, we're really good about being, hey man, how can I help you right now? How about I handle reaching out to these people, or the insurance guy, or the attorney, and I'll get all this taken care of. And so we like to focus on each other's strengths, and then just kind of even out the workload and help each other out as we go. Because with three people, it definitely there's a lot of work to be done in multifamily. Yeah. So it's nice to be able to split the workload up a little bit. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
I love it.
In order to get better insight, like you said, I want to get right into the meat and potatoes of that deal. Often we scoop some golden nuggets out of guests' transactions. Why don't you walk us through that? The sourcing, the numbers, the acquisition, and now management of that 32-unit building you bought in Indianapolis.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. So we sourced the deal from a broker. It was an off-market deal that we had just gotten from a broker relationship. Rich did a great job chatting. This was a Marcus and Millichap broker in Indianapolis. And Rich had just been shooting the shit with them a lot. This broker had a brother-in-law that was a pilot. And so our air traffic control background kind of helped us build that relationship, as we talked about that a little bit. And then one day it was interesting because Rich was speaking to him over the phone about, what our criteria is, seeing if he had any deals in his pipeline. recently that were meeting that. And at first he actually told him, you know what, I don't really have anything. I think this is going to work out. They hang up the phone, and minutes later, the broker called right back and said, you know what, guys, actually, I think I have something that maybe would fit for you. So the deal is located in Greenwood, Indiana, which is about 15 minutes south of downtown Indianapolis.
Okay.
And so it's a part of the Indianapolis MSA. It's a 32-unit 1968 vintage. It's a mixture of 8 one-bedrooms, 4 two-bedrooms that have an extra room as a den. We market those as a 3-bedroom sometimes. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of them are 2 bedrooms. The property was owned by a mom-and-pop owner who also managed it themselves.
Okay.
So that's going to tell you a lot. The property was owned free and clear. So they had owned this property for a long time. They had inherited it. And again, it was a 1968 vintage, and I don't believe it had really ever received any major updates. So there was a lot of rehab that needed to be done to the units.
What was the purchase price?
Purchase price was $1.2 million.
Okay.
And it was owned by mom and pop. Pop died, and mom was trying to just get rid of some of the assets. She was still trying to manage it herself, so she wanted to offload this asset. Mm. So at $1.2 million, we looked at the deal. We loved everything about the submarket. In Greenwood, it's a really good neighborhood. Median household income is $58,000. It has a great school system. The school rating's above an 80, with all of like the middle school and high school are top rated schools in the region. It's got low crime. It has steadily increasing population year over year. A lot of people are moving to Greenwood. There's a good mix of jobs between medical, retail. There's even a lot of executive positions. There's just not one single employer that we would rely on. Rent has been increasing on average 5% each year in that market over the past 5 years.
That's
there was a lot that we liked about the market, so we were sold on that. The issues that we saw with the property is that it just simply needed a lot of CapEx. So when I say a lot of CapEx, I mean it has balconies that needed complete replacement. So every second story unit, it was 2 stories, 4 buildings, and all of the second story balconies needed to be replaced because they were sagging. All of the units needed at least $8,000 in renovations. They need to be renovated from top to bottom. This was also one of those value adds where, this is the worst property in the best neighborhood. All of the surrounding properties are great properties, nice, well kept. Right. This property had, it was ghetto essentially. There was bad tenants living there, problem tenants, people that weren't paying rent. The rents were on average $200 below market. Right. And in some cases, for some units, even more. Yeah. So we looked at it, and we knew that if we could, complete the rehab, it needed about $600,000 in rehab, so $1.8 million all in. Yeah. Properties were trading in this MSA at a 6 cap for this vintage and everything. So we underwrote the property on the exit or refinance as having either an 8 cap or a 7 cap to see how much money we can make if we'd get our money back and be able to do a cash out refinance, get all our money back plus more and move on. And what we found is being ultra conservative, at a 6 cap, we would be looking at a $2.9 million valuation. At a 7 cap, I believe it was $2.5 million valuation. And at an 8 cap, we were looking at about a $2.2 million valuation.
Right.
So even factoring in for a really hard market turn with a decompression in cap rates, we found that we could make a lot of money on this property, and it made sense. We made sure to build in contingencies for if things went wrong during rehab, and we basically stress tested this property every way we can. We actually found out so far through the reposition that we were way too conservative, and our rents that we were anticipating getting, we're getting a lot more for them. So yeah, that's basically the main meat and potatoes there of that acquisition.
Yeah, that was in December, right? December 2019.
That's correct. We closed on the property in December of 2019. So here we are recording on April 21st. So far, we've renovated 10 units and have filled those units up with new tenants. And we're continuing. We've got some more moving out over the next couple months.
Do you know the average premium that you're getting for each renovated unit?
Yeah, about $200 so far.
About
for the
$200. Wow, that's huge. And you're putting in 8,000 per unit, you said?
We're putting in a little over 8,000 per unit right now for renovations.
And are you now still raising rents?
Say again?
Are you right now still raising rents?
Yeah. So we've, as far as like raising rents, once these the properties are renovated, we're going up to the market premium of $825 right now is what the market premium for the 2-bedroom is. That's what we found is the sweet spot. We did try to market it a little bit higher at $845 for the 2 bedrooms, and we just the deal flow on tenants was a little slow, so we bumped that down to $825 and included a concession, and it just blew up. We get thousands of leads now, so. We're thinking that once the property is stabilized and we've completed the exterior renovations, that we're going to be able to increase those a little bit more. But in the meantime, the property still doesn't have the curb appeal that we're looking for. So I think that that's affecting us being able to get even more. We had underwrote the property to get $795, I think, for the 2 bedrooms. So we're beating our pro forma.
That's great, man.
Can you talk a little more about the debt side? I mean, what kind of debt do you guys put on that property?
Oh yeah, so we got debt through a traditional financing through a bank. We got a 5-year loan term, 30-year amortization, 3-2-1 step down prepayment penalty, and I believe the interest rate is 4.49%.
Okay, yeah. And what LTV was that?
That was 75% loan to value.
75. Okay, yeah, good, man.
Coverage ratio?
Say again.
Your debt service coverage ratio, what is it?
Right now, actually, the debt service coverage ratio isn't great until we finish repositioning the asset. I mean, right now we're sitting like right at like 1.2, 1.25. So it was a little thin for the bank. But we knew that, and we showed them our business plan. We were able to show a well thought out business plan and show the bank, like, look, like the debt service coverage ratio isn't great day one, but that's because she hasn't done anything to this property in years.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a value add, right? If you had
Yeah. So that was, starting out day one, it's not cash flowing great. The DSCR isn't great, but at the end of 2020, at the end of year one, this property will be cash flowing, and it'll be looking the picture. We're looking at 20% cash on cash returns conservatively.
Wow.
Oh, that's amazing, man. Congratulations on that great first deal with your partners. Obviously there's, we could spend 30 more minutes just deconstructing that deal and the challenges that you've seen so far and the investor structure. I assume you syndicated that deal and all that.
The investment structure. So the way we set it up with our investors is, so there's the 3 of us. This is all just a joint venture, but we brought in 3 additional investors. We couldn't really syndicate this deal, but we needed a little bit more capital. So what we did is we basically gave them a great deal. We said, look, you guys can come in on this deal as a joint venture with us. We'll do all the work. We just need a little bit extra capital, and then you guys can, still make your vote. This is just set up as a straight up equity percentage share, and that's your vote, right? So your traditional setup for a JV. But the 3 extra partners we brought in very little money. I think total we brought in $100,000 from them, which is a small percentage of the overall total. So between the main partners, myself, Mike, and Rich, all it takes is 2 of us to vote on something, and it'll get done. So we set it up that way, and it makes sense, and it works out for everybody. One of the guys that came in on the deal with us is a guy that also wants to kind of get started in multifamily. So this was also a great way for him to get on the loan, him to learn a little bit by putting very little money into it, and kind of get his first deal, quote unquote, under his belt.
Well, man, I think, I love it. I think it's an amazing deal for you guys to start building, like a formal track record as a group, and you're nimble because you don't need to, like, you can call all the shots. You don't have all these investors to report to and all that. So,
100%.
so yeah, good stuff, man. Again, we could spend 30 more minutes talking about everything else in the deal, but I guess we're running out of time here. So everyone that wants to learn more about that specific deal, I'm sure you've talked about it on the Multifamily Takeoff podcast. So just go ahead.
Absolutely.
And then listen.
Thanks for the plug.
Oh man,
Thanks for the
sure.
plug,
That's
yeah.
what we're here for: to collaborate and push each other. So let's start. Let's start bringing this to a close. One question that I always like to ask, and I just want to hear different perspectives. So from your experience, something that you hear given out as advice in the industry of real estate constantly, that everyone seems to be telling each other or new investors to do something, but you're just not in agreement, or you just don't agree with that advice. What would that be?
So this is an interesting answer that I'm going to give, because it's going to go a little bit against what you hear all the time, but just hear me out till the end, all your listeners. And that's, don't focus too much simply on your cap rate equation and purchase price and what the cap rates are in the neighborhood. That is important, obviously. The most important question, though, is what are your returns going to be? How can you make this deal work? And the reason why I say that is I'll use my 32 unit as an example. This is a C-class asset, an old vintage 1968, right? Cap rates are trading at a 6 cap. Obviously, they can decompress when you got an asset that old. So we built in for a 7 or even an 8 cap worst case scenario, which is super conservative if you're going to 2 cap percentage points, but it could happen. So when we were underwriting the deal, this deal took forever. We extended this contract twice. I think, it was a period of like 3 months that it was under, or 4 months that it was under contract. There was a lot of negotiations happening because we kept finding all these CapEx problems, running the numbers, and she wouldn't budge off 1.2 million, but just based off of her net operating income, we'd be buying it like a 5.8 cap or 5.7 cap just because this property wasn't making much money.
Right. So
most people would say, well, I'm not going to buy a 1968 asset at a 5.8 cap. You're insane.
Right.
Especially in Indianapolis. Like I'm running the numbers here, and it should be trading at a 7 cap. So here's my offer at a 7 cap. Well, we looked at it as, okay, well, what if we did buy it at this price and we did all of these renovations? We spent all of this money, $600,000 on this property.
Yeah.
What is it going to be worth at the end? And will we make enough money? And the answer was yes. And I think that that's the most important question you got to answer. So I think some people, when they're making offers on deals, I think you just hear it said so much on this is how you underwrite a deal. But I guess what I'm saying is there are times that it could make sense to overpay, quote unquote, a little bit for a property. We definitely overpaid a little bit for that property. But if at the end of the day, we have a potential to make $1 million and get our money back, then you didn't overpay, right? Because if you're achieving your returns, and so that's I 100% agree. I couldn't agree more. So so I think some people might No, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, sometimes I think, when you're reading these books and you're reading about how to analyze a property and how to make an offer, sometimes people might get too hung up on like, well, this is the cap rate I'm going to purchase at. I say, look at your returns, and if you can make the deal work, then that's what matters.
Love it.
I love it.
Good stuff.
I think we couldn't agree more. Lennon and I, we always talk about that, and even especially if you're a value-add investor, cap rates, you always talk about cap rates, and definitely they're very important, a very important metric, but they're definitely not the most important. It definitely is not the most important metric. So even if you're a value-add investor. So
yeah.
I don't know if you have any other question, Lee, for...
No, let's bring it home, man.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Shawn, thank you very much for being here with us today, man. We really appreciate it. I think that there were definitely some golden nuggets to be taken there. So I wish you the best. Whatever you need, we're here for you.
Yeah, let us know where can people find you. Feel free to plug away all your product, ebooks, podcasts, meetups, whatever it is, man. This is a platform for just for
Awesome.
that. So go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, guys. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This was awesome. This was fun. I really enjoyed it. If anybody wants to get in contact with me or my partners, you could find me. You can email me directly at Shawn, spelled SHAWN, at themultifamilytakeoff.com. You could also learn more about us at simply looking at themultifamilytakeoff.com. And if you want to check out our podcast, look at the Multifamily Takeoff in iTunes or Spotify. You can give us a listen, and we'd really appreciate it. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bueno, señores, ahí lo tienen. Shawn DiMartile, excelente podcast lleno de muchos buenos nuggets de conocimiento y aprendizaje. Definitivamente vamos a estar trayendo más invitados en inglés. Es súper divertido también, es variado y por supuesto, pues no se olviden de compartir este episodio con alguien que esté interesado de repente en empezar su carrera, empezar un partnership con algunos amigos. Creo que aquí hay unos buenos datos para eso. Y por supuesto, síganos en todas nuestras redes sociales y déjenos saber qué tal les parece. Un review en iTunes nunca está de más. Un review sincero es bienvenido. Bueno, se habla real estate en todas las plataformas excepto Twitter, que es se habla RE, y se habla realestate.co en nuestra página web. Y bueno, ahí lo tienen. Emocionados por esta entrevista nuevamente. Y será que entonces nos vemos en la próxima, Arturo.
Nos vemos en la próxima, Lee.
Listo.